Good morning. Welcome to the November 2013 meeting of the Federal Communications Commission. Let me begin by exercising the privilege of the chair to make a couple of observations. Obviously, this is my first meeting. It is a privilege to be here. As I have said before, it is an incredible honor to work with these four people and all of the staff at the FCC. Commissioner O'Reilly and I hit the ground running as the rookies here, as we can see from this agenda. But it would be totally remiss, and I'm sure that Commissioner O'Reilly joins me in this, if we did not stop and say to Chairwoman Clyburn, Commissioner Rosenworcel, and Commissioner Pai, our deep gratitude to them for the leadership when this was a three-person commission, and thank you for all that you three have done to keep things moving. And I love the description of that ridiculously productive era of Chairwoman Clyburn that one of the press folks. So thank you to all. Thank you to all of you. Yes. We would also be remiss this morning if we didn't pause for a moment to think about the tragedy that is occurring halfway around the world in the Philippines and Typhoon Haiyan and the staggering devastation that has brought. Our thoughts are obviously with the Philippine people, and there are many Philippine expats who work here at the Commission, who have family back there, and our thoughts are especially with our colleagues. But this is a time when you see the power of communications, the power of what we're all about. Mobile networks are coming back up in the Philippines and are crucial to the recovery. Satellite networks have been the only alternative for many first responders and NGOs, and this agency has been collaborating with U.S. industry, with the Department of State, Department of Defense, with the embassy in Manila to make sure that there is prompt licensing of equipment to be used in the Philippines in this emergency, and we will continue to be doing whatever is within our power to aid those struggling with this. This is a time when we think about the brotherhood of man, and we are all in this together. The United States has been responding both governmentally and privately, and the FCC is proud to be a part of that and will continue to be a part of that, and to be responding to requests from both the Philippine government and industry and our government. With that, Madam Secretary, would you please introduce the agenda for today?
Mr. Chairman, good morning to you, and good morning, Commissioners. Today's agenda includes one item for your consideration and two presentations. First, you will consider a declaratory ruling to clarify the agency's policies and procedures in reviewing broadcast applications for transfer of control, or requests for declaratory ruling that seek greater than 25% indirect foreign ownership in broadcast licensees, pursuant to Section 310b-4 of the Communications Act. Second, you will hear an update on universal service reform implementation. Last on your agenda today, you will hear a presentation on a new FCC speed test app for Android smartphones. This crowdsourcing app will expand the Measuring Broadband America program from fixed to mobile broadband services in order to empower consumers, industry, and policymakers with open, transparent, and accurate information about mobile broadband services across the United States. This is your agenda for today. The first item will be presented by the Media Bureau. Bill Lake, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Lake?
Good morning, Chairman Wheeler and Commissioners. The Media Bureau presents for your consideration today a declaratory ruling that is intended to clarify Commission policies and procedures pertaining to foreign investment in broadcast licensees. While the Commission has considered many applications for foreign investment in common carrier licensees over the years, and has built up a body of precedent and procedures in that area, our precedent has not kept pace with respect to the broadcast industry. Applications proposing broadcast foreign investment have been scarce, at least in part because of a misperception that the Commission would not consider them. While Section 310(b)(4) of the Communications Act requires Commission approval of indirect foreign ownership that exceeds 25% of a broadcast licensee, the Commission has discretion to consider such arrangements. The declaratory ruling before you today seeks to clarify our policies and procedures to make clear that the Commission is willing to consider proposed foreign investments in broadcast licensees on a case-by-case basis. Joining me at the table are Hillary DeNigro, Chief of the Industry Analysis Division, Marcia Glauberman, Deputy Chief of that division, and Jamila Best Johnson, Senior Legal Advisor in that division. Jamila will present the declaratory ruling.
Good morning, Chairman Wheeler and Commissioners. Section 310(b)(4) of the Communications Act includes a presumptive 25% limit on foreign ownership of broadcast licensees. The statute allows the Commission to prohibit any proposed investment above that benchmark when it finds that doing so is in the public interest. This provision has early roots, having originated in the Radio Act of 1927 and been incorporated in the Communications Act of 1934. Its enactment reflected congressional concern that foreign ownership might harm the national interest in light of the editorial control that licensees have over programming, content, as well as their control over physical assets such as transmission facilities. The Commission has interpreted the 25% benchmark as the presumptive limit consistent with the public interest. Applications seeking over the benchmark foreign ownership in the broadcast area have been rare. The majority of Commission precedent under Section 310(b)(4) has involved foreign investment in the controlling U.S. parent of telecommunications carriers. The proposed declaratory ruling reaffirms our legal precedent that with respect to the application of Section 310(b)(4 in broadcast cases, the 25% threshold is a trigger for the exercise of Commission discretion. However, the declaratory ruling clarifies that the Commission intends to consider any applications received on a case-by-case basis. It specifies the filing procedures for applicants seeking approval for foreign ownership above the benchmark and the requirement that applicants must provide detailed information sufficient for the Commission to make the public interest finding required by the statute. The declaratory ruling acknowledges historical concerns that are the basis for the 25% benchmark. It affirms that the security of the nation's broadcast infrastructure remains paramount, noting that broadcasters occupy a vital role in the daily lives of Americans through the provision of local, state, national, and international news, national emergency alerts, Amber Alerts for missing children, and Homeland Security information, among other critical information services. It also explains that, consistent with longstanding policy in reviewing foreign ownership of common carrier applicants and licensees, the Commission will continue to afford appropriate deference to the expertise of the executive branch agencies on issues related to national security, law enforcement, foreign policy, and trade policy. Although the item does not adopt specific procedures or guidelines for the structuring of foreign investment proposals, the declaratory ruling does contemplate that over time the Commission's case-by-case review process for broadcast applications and petitions for declaratory ruling may lead to the adoption in future proceedings of substantive guidelines or streamlining or other procedural mechanisms for the processing of proposed investments. The Bureau recommends adoption of the declaratory ruling and requests editorial privileges.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We'll now hear comments from the bench. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, allow me to welcome you and Commissioner O'Reilly to the FCC, and so appropriately setting the tone for the day. We are an agency that sometimes when I go home, they say, "Are you on the FTC or the FCC?" So sometimes people do not, know our worth, but you set forth the tone. And when disaster strikes, collectively as a nation, and of course as the FCC, we go into action, and we're working cooperatively to help those persons in dire need, and I appreciate you for acknowledging that. And again, welcome. You definitely hit the ground running. My only request of you is if you would share your exercise and diet routine, because I don't know where you get all of this energy from. So anyway, if you would do that for me, I wanted to say that publicly, so I would, so people would follow up, and the press corps follow up to see if you've done that. Thank you. I appreciate it. I know. He's not going to forgive me for that.
Once a chairwoman, always a chairwoman, I think is what I hear there.
From my earliest days as a commissioner, I've heard time and time again that a major impediment to new entry in the broadcast industry is access to capital. These concerns, expressed by broadcasters and public sector interests alike, highlight just how acute this situation is for those who are underrepresented in ownership ranks, namely minorities and women. Knocking down unnecessary barriers and realizing greater ownership diversity will help open our airwaves to the presentation of content that more fully reflects the composition of our broad society. And while it may be true that the Commission has limited jurisdiction to influence the flow of capital, Section 310B4 of the Act is at least one tool we do have. Today, I'm pleased to say, we clarified the Commission's policies for foreign investment in broadcast licensees by signaling that the Commission is open to considering proposed ownership investments in broadcasting on a case-by-case basis. Doing so will help ensure that broadcasting remains a vital forward-leaning media service. Competition and innovation in media in the 21st century move at warp speed, and in order to keep pace, broadcasters need new and increased sources of capital. Although other platforms such as telecommunications have long had the benefit of access to foreign investment, broadcasters have not yet fully tapped those available resources. My hope is that this action will remove whatever hindrances may have restricted new opportunities. Today's declaratory ruling affirms that the plain language of the statute allows a commission to authorize foreign capital investment above the 25% test statutory threshold in the controlling U.S. parent of a broadcast licensee. The decision does not attempt to set forth in detail all of the criteria we might consider in determining whether a particular investment is consistent with the public interest. Instead, it contemplates that the Commission will proceed thoroughly in evaluating all the facts and circumstances implicated by any specific arrangement that is proposed. An applicant is required to submit detailed information sufficient for us to make a satisfactory public interest finding. No investment above the benchmark is permitted without the express prior approval of the Commission. Consistent with our long-standing practice in reviewing foreign investment in telecommunications licensees, we will continue to afford appropriate deference to the expertise of the executive branch agencies on issues related to national security, law enforcement, foreign policy, and trade policy. I thank the staff in the Media Bureau, and particularly Dave Grimaldi, for their hard work on this important item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Rosenzweig.
Thank you, and thank you for starting with a note about the Philippines. I think this agency has a proud record of working with our federal partners and our partners in the private sector to respond to tragedies like this one. On a happier note, it had been sort of thin up here, and it suddenly feels crowded. This feels like a party.
On both sides of
yeah,
you now, huh?
I know. And I've moved left or right. I can't figure. It depends where you're sitting. All right. Like other segments of the communications industry, broadcasters are facing an increasingly complex, multi-platform future. But unlike other segments of the communications industry, broadcasters have faced unique funding constraints with respect to investment from foreign shores. Today, the Commission remedies this anomaly. We begin by acknowledging that federal law expressly permits foreign investment of up to 25% in the controlling parent of a broadcast licensee. However, we make clear one of the less clear aspects of the law, that investment that exceeds this 25% benchmark is permissible if the Commission determines that it is in the public interest. I believe that this is the right thing to do for two fundamental reasons. First, I believe our existing approach that treats this 25% threshold as an inflexible bar is now an historical aberration. This was a policy long ago designed to prevent foreign powers from disrupting ship-to-shore governmental communications during warfare. But just as horses and bayonets are not the tools of modern warfare, the cyber threats we face today are not especially well guarded by this prohibition. Moreover, as scores of civil rights groups have acknowledged, this historical anomaly may have the effect of diminishing investment in small and minority-owned broadcasters. Second, I believe the steps we take here are entirely consistent with national security objectives. We grant no blanket waivers. We do not permit foreign entities to wholly or directly own broadcast licensees. We will just review what comes before us on a case-by-case basis, consistent with the public interest, and that includes appropriate deference to executive branch agencies with expertise in security and trade matters. This is a modern and thoughtful approach, and it has my full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to join my colleagues in welcoming you and Commissioner O'Reilly to the bench. With respect to your own entry, I thought it was notable that you began your week by standing literally in the lobby of the agency, greeting every employee who came in, and I thought that set the right tone. Similarly, I thought the way you closed the week was wonderful by recognizing the many veterans who serve in the agency and give to their country, not just through this commission that we love, but through the armed forces. So from beginning to end, I think you, as Commissioner Clyburn said, set the right tone, and I look forward to working with you and our new colleague at the end of the bench in the years to come. I also want to join my colleagues in thanking those at the FCC and throughout the U.S. government who have extended a hand of friendship and cooperation to those in the Philippines, including the National Telecommunications Commission. Having seen some of the videos of the Typhoon Haiyan, it's almost unfathomable to think about a country made up of thousands of islands, remote, many of them, having to struggle with the aftermath of such a devastating storm. And so I think they know, thanks in part to Chairman Wheeler's leadership, that the FCC stands ready to do whatever we can to assist those in this moment of great need. Over a year ago, I called upon the Commission to modernize its approach to foreign investment in broadcasting. Today, we do just that. At long last, we revise our interpretation of Section 310b(4) of the Communications Act to eliminate the obsolete de facto ban on foreign investment of more than 25% in U.S. broadcast holding companies. I'm optimistic that this declaratory ruling will invigorate American broadcasting, will increase minority ownership, and it will expand opportunities abroad for U.S. media companies. As a declaratory ruling points out, there has been a sharp disparity in the Commission's treatment of foreign investment in the common carrier and broadcast contexts. On one hand, in recent years, the Commission has approved foreign investment in U.S. telecommunications carriers exceeding the 25% benchmark approximately 150 times. The Commission has repeatedly recognized that, and I quote, foreign investment has been an important source of financing for U.S. telecommunications companies, fostering technical innovation, economic growth, and job creation, unquote. Indeed, foreign investment has proven to be critical in creating the robust competition that we see today in the modern American wireless marketplace. On the other hand, while a foreign company can indirectly hold more than a 25% stake in a nationwide wireless carrier, cable operator, or internet service provider, it has been all but impossible for a foreign entity to own more than 25% of a U.S. broadcast holding company. The end result? A British company has, at least for the time being, a 45% stake in our nation's largest wireless carrier. But that same British company is not allowed to hold a 45% stake in a single AM radio station in rural Kansas. This disparity does not make any sense to me, and it harms our nation's broadcasting industry. Foreign investment can be an important source of financing, innovation, economic growth, and job creation for broadcasters, just as it has been for telecommunications carriers. And so I'm pleased that today's declaratory ruling takes a much-needed step toward leveling the regulatory playing field. As in the common carrier context, the Commission will now engage in a case-by-case review of proposed foreign investment in broadcast holding companies that exceeds a 25% stake. This approach will give broadcasters more options for accessing capital while still allowing the Commission and the U.S. government to safeguard national security. Now, aside from boosting the broadcast industry, today's ruling is good news for another, equally important reason. It will increase minority ownership of broadcast outlets. Since joining the Commission, I've heard the same message over and over again when it comes to ownership diversity. The biggest obstacle to minority ownership in the broadcast industry is the lack of access to capital. And that is why the Minority Media and Telecommunications Council and 30 other national minority and civil rights organizations have told us that permitting additional investment in the broadcasting industry would be, quote, one of the most significant steps the Commission could take to reverse the decline in minority broadcast ownership, unquote. With an expanded ability to access capital from abroad, minority entrepreneurs will have a better chance of being able to enter the broadcast industry or expand existing businesses. Indeed, this item demonstrates how regulation can serve as a barrier to minority ownership and how modernizing our rules can promote diversity. Today's decision also should help expand investment opportunities abroad for U.S. media companies. Some countries only permit foreign ownership in their broadcast markets by investors whose home nation provides reciprocity. And so therefore, by liberalizing our own approach to foreign investment in the U.S. broadcast industry, our own companies should have greater opportunities to participate in those nations' media markets. And I hope that our efforts will encourage countries that currently impose more stringent restrictions on foreign investment to relax their own rules. Finally, given our new chairman's well-known penchant for history, I thought it would be fitting to conclude this morning with a quote from one of my own favorite historical figures, Winston Churchill. This is not the end. This is not the beginning of the end, but it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning. Put simply, this declaratory ruling does not finish the Commission's work on this topic. Today, we have just taken the first, relatively easy step of updating our general policies to fit the times. Now, the harder work begins. We will have to develop additional procedures for applicants seeking to take advantage of this declaratory ruling. We will have to process the applications that we receive, and we will have to formulate more specific substantive standards for analyzing those applications. As we go about these tasks, I hope that we will move promptly and stay focused on the important objective of maximizing investment in the broadcast industry. My thanks to David Honig, Maurita Coley, and the many others at the Minority Media and Telecommunications Council for placing this item squarely on our agenda and making sure that ultimately we took action. My thanks, too, to Chairman Wheeler for your leadership in bringing this important matter to a vote and for your open, engaged, and collegial approach to working through these difficult issues. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Pai. Commissioner O'Reilly?
I like the sound of that.
Yours, sir.
Thank you. I have a longer statement, so I hope you'll indulge me today, and I promise in the future it'll be shorter. Let me start by joining the chairman's words regarding the typhoon in the Philippines. It was very well said, and I thank you for that. Today marks my first commission open meeting as a commissioner, and it is appropriate to start by expressing my deep appreciation to my new colleagues on the commission. Chairman Wheeler, former acting chairwoman Clyburn, and Commissioners Rosenworcel and Pai have been exceptionally welcoming. More importantly, my few days at the Commission have taught me that the true heart and soul of the Commission is the myriad of warm and helpful employees who bring their energy and commitment to this building every day. Thank you. As most of you know, I arrived at the Commission last week fresh from my confirmation process. Let me share with you a recurring theme from many meetings and conservations that I occurred. Both Republicans and Democrats want the Commission to bring greater certainty to the communications marketplace by making the decisions that are ready to be made. I look forward to following the Chairman's leadership as best I can while staying consistent with my principles. In the matter before us, the Commission is issuing a declaratory ruling on Section 310B4 of the Communications Act of 1934 as it pertains to broadcast licenses. I do have some general thoughts with this item, which I will discuss, but they do not keep me from voting in favor of its adoption. I'm very familiar with the discussion over 310B and the interest by many parties to making alterations. It seems only fitting that my first open meeting addresses the same topic as one of my first hearings as a staff member of the then House Commerce Committee. At that time, the Congress debated a proposal to completely repeal 310B. It did not occur. Further, I spent the greater part of the last 5 years working on various trade-related matters before the Congress. The value of the ruling is to clarify that the Commission's approach to 310B4 should not be interpreted as foreclosing the option of approving foreign ownership above 25%. It can be viewed as a restatement of the Commission's longstanding approach. For some, the item may seem as a change in policy for those who believe the Commission's prior approach was an irrebuttable presumption against any relief. In either scenario, U.S. broadcasters and foreign investors should know that this Commission is now open to considering foreign entities holding capital stock of companies that control broadcast licenses exceeding 25%, perhaps up to a high of 100%. The benefits of this clarification could be significant. With a successful application, U.S. broadcasters will have a new source of capital to operate in the dynamic and competitive video and audio marketplace. In some instances, greater foreign investment in the companies that control U.S. broadcast licenses may improve the financial footing of existing broadcasters or increase access to broadcasting for unique voices in the marketplace. Equally important, 310B has been used over the years as a flawed excuse by other nations to retain indefensible trade barriers that harm U.S. companies. Bob Vastine of Georgetown University and former president of the Coalition of Service Industries commented recently, "For years, it's been used rhetorically against us. When industry has gone in for the right to fully own in the insurance sector or some other sector, we've often had this thrown in our face." Some general thoughts. Number one, speedier decision. I acknowledge that the Commission may have been hamstrung recently by the political process, which is partly my fault, but there should always be ways to be more nimble and responsive to the relatively easy cases. We don't know what deals would or could have been done had this item been approved earlier than the 14 months from its initial request. This is not in any way a criticism of the great staff that worked on this item. It is only a thought to be added to the process reforms being considered. Number two, could be more. The Commission's action today is commendable, but it doesn't move the needle enough. It could have been more had it been accompanied by an NPRM to further reform Section 310B4 as it applies to broadcast licensees. Components of reform could include shifting the burden to the Commission to justify blocking a deal, establishing a new level that would be acceptable under the public interest, or simply providing more guidance on which applications may be more likely to be approved by the Commission. Recognizing there are limits to declaratory rulings, the item's indication of potentially doing a further Commission proceeding sometime in the future seems empty. Number three, bigger picture on investment. While today's proceeding should be beneficial to some U.S. broadcasters, it is also useful to non-broadcasters. Removing trade and investment barriers has benefits outside of the broadcasting sector, as increasing trade and investment opportunities brings more jobs, improved economic growth, and efficiencies of scale to the U.S. and international marketplace. I'm surprised the record did not include more comment on this point, and I'm sure the Commission staff would have been happy to accommodate my thoughts in some capacity. To be clear, no criticism lies with the able staff who have gone out of their way to help me, as any issue with incorporating these thoughts into the ruling lies with me and the timing of my arrival. In conclusion, all in all, this is a positive step and one I'm pleased to support. I extend my appreciation to former Acting Chairwoman Clyburn for her work on this item, Commissioner Pai for being an active instigator to initiate the item, and the Media Bureau staff for getting me up to speed in quick order. And remember, stay strong for freedom.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. One of the advantages, I was just sitting here thinking about being the last comment, is that I get to hear the thoughtful comments of my colleagues here, and Commissioner O'Reilly's comment a moment ago about Chairwoman Clyburn and Commissioner Pai and their leadership in bringing this issue along is quite apt. This did not happen to show up on this agenda by accident. It was the work of the three commissioners here that preceded us all. We live in a global economy. That's no surprise to any of us, and we should make sure that whatever regulatory framework we establish for our own activities does not inhibit the free flow of capital consistent with our national priorities. This ruling clarifies that the Commission is open to considering proposals for foreign investment in broadcast licenses that exceed 25%. And let me emphasize that line, open to considering. As I think all of my colleagues have indicated, this will be a case-by-case detailed review of whatever information is presented. It will be far from a rubber stamp. That national security issues are involved, media diversity issues are involved, localism issues are involved, and the efficient use of spectrum is involved. All of these are things that Congress has mandated and instructed us to take into our activities here. I'd like to particularly focus for a moment on that last benchmark about the efficient use of spectrum. The Commission is working to put spectrum to the highest and best use right now, including a voluntary incentive auction that is designed to let the marketplace make that decision as to what is the highest and best use. From my point of view, efficient use of spectrum is a sine qua non in considering the kind of applications that may result from this decision. It could, for instance, unleash capital for the investment necessary to move to shared spectrum operations for broadcasters. Hooray. It could also, for instance, help finance businesses that move from UHF to VHF, allowing freeing up of spectrum. Right on. It will encourage ownership diversity. It will expand localism, and it will be done in an environment recognizing that we're in the midst of a major effort to improve spectrum efficiency. And I encourage all who want to take advantage of this decision to keep all of the policy goals in mind when and if they may want to take advantage of this. Are there any other comments from anybody on the bench? If not, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, next, the Wireline Competition Bureau, Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, and Office of Native Affairs and Policy will update you on the status of Universal Service Reform implementation.
Thank you. And while they take their chair, I'm going to call attention to my first rookie mistake. I forgot to say that the request for editorial privileges is granted, but it is. Julie, are you going to lead us off here?
I am. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm pleased to introduce for you today a report on recent activities to implement the Universal Service high-cost program reforms adopted by the Commission 2 years ago in the landmark Universal Service Intercarrier Compensation Transformation Order. The facts and accomplishments we'll share with you this morning are the result of diligent efforts by staff in the Wireline Competition Bureau, the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, and the Office of Native Affairs and Policy. With me at the table, starting at your right, are Carol Maddie, Deputy Chief of the Wireline Competition Bureau, Alex Menard, Assistant Chief of the Telecommunications Access Policy Division in my bureau, Patty Robbins, Attorney Advisor in the Auctions and Spectrum Access Division of the Wireless Bureau, Irene Flannery, Deputy Chief of the Office of Native Affairs and Policy, Jeff Blackwell, Chief of that office, and Jane Jackson, Associate Chief in the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. Alex will lead us off, and then we'll also hear from Patty and Irene.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. We are pleased to update the Commission on our activities to implement the Connect America Fund since our presentation at the June agenda meeting. We've been busy in the last 5 months. Under Chairwoman Clyburn, we made significant progress moving forward on multiple fronts. In the USF ICC Transformation Order, the Commission adopted 2 phases for the Connect America Fund implementation in areas served by a price cap carrier. Phase 1 was designed to quickly expand broadband to unserved locations while the Commission worked on Phase 2 implementation. After providing nearly $115 million in Phase 1 during 2012, the Commission earlier this year adopted a second round of Phase 1 funding, building on the lessons learned from the first round. The Commission made up to $485 million available to price cap carriers to leverage private investment and accelerate the availability of broadband in rural America. The price cap carriers responded. The elections for Phase 1 Round 2 funding occurred in August, with carriers requesting over $385 million in funding to deploy broadband-capable infrastructure for the first time to up to 600,000 rural homes and small businesses in 44 states and Puerto Rico. The funding elections are subject to a challenge process designed to ensure that funding only goes to areas that are unserved. The pleading cycle for the challenges closed last week. We have already authorized for disbursement over $32 million in funding for locations in Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. On the screen, we've reproduced snapshots of maps for Phase 1 build-out prepared by our geospatial experts in OSP. The maps are posted on the FCC's website. When you look at the maps online, more information is displayed when you zoom in closer. For instance, for Alaska, if you were to zoom in closer, you would see that funding has been requested and authorized for locations in the Denali Borough and in Yukon-Kyaukuk Census Tract. For Hawaii, funding has been requested to serve locations on the Big Island, with the size of the gray dot representing the number of locations. And finally, zooming in further for Puerto Rico, locations to be served are within the areas highlighted in black. Collectively, these maps show where we've already authorized Phase 1 funding, which will help bring broadband to more than 100,000 consumers and businesses in Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. This map shows all the areas in the lower 48 states where Round 2 funding has been requested. You can see different size circles of dark gray over every county in which support has been requested. The larger the circle, the larger potential number of locations to be served. We are working on authorizations for those areas that were not challenged, and then we'll focus on reviewing the challenges and responses to determine the eligibility of the remaining areas. Shifting now to Phase 2 implementation. To recap, in the USF ICC Transformation Order, the Commission concluded that Phase 2 of the Connect America Fund will provide ongoing funding to support voice and broadband-capable networks in areas with no unsubsidized competitor. The order provided that incumbent price cap carriers will be given the opportunity to make a state-level commitment to provide voice and broadband to the areas they serve in exchange for support determined by a forward-looking cost model. The Commission directed the Wireline Competition Bureau to develop and adopt a cost model. In price cap areas where the incumbent declines the state-level commitment, a competitive process will be used to distribute support. As we previously reported, over the course of nearly a year, the Bureau has announced a number of working versions of the cost model, with each version containing refinements and adjustments compared to the prior version. Under Chairwoman Clyburn's watch, we released version 3.2 at the end of August, with illustrative results showing a range of potential outcomes under differing assumptions. Since the summer, we have been actively working to narrow the issues requiring resolution, focusing on inputs for the non-contiguous United States. We are targeting release of the version 4 of the model in the near future. In September, as part of our open, transparent, and deliberative process to implement Phase 2, Bureau staff presented 3 webinars to state public utility commissions and their staffs, with over 60 attendees for each webinar. The Bureau presentations are all available in PDF on the Commission's website, and audio recordings for all 3 webinars are available at USAC's website. In the first webinar, we provided an overview of the Bureau's progress in implementing Phase 2. The second one focused on the cost model, and the third provided a more in-depth explanation of the challenge process, which will be used to determine census blocks eligible for Phase 2 funding. Under Chairwoman Clyburn, the Bureau also adopted an order addressing the service obligations for price cap carriers electing to receive Phase 2 model-based support. In that order, released 2 weeks ago, we addressed a number of key questions regarding those service commitments. How we will evaluate pricing and broadband usage to ensure reasonable comparability in rural areas to urban areas, what latency standard must be met, and how latency can be tested and measured. We also addressed how we will apply these metrics to determine what areas we will consider served by an unsubsidized competitor. Our goal is to build on the lessons learned from the Phase 1 challenge process so that all relevant stakeholders will know what is expected in the Phase 2 challenge process. The Bureau also has been looking at various issues impacting rate of return carriers. One area of focus has been the high-cost loop support benchmarking rule adopted by the Commission in 2011. The Bureau implemented the benchmarks rule in 2012 with separate limits for capital and operating expenses. And then in a 6th order on reconsideration this past April, the Commission directed the Bureau to revise its approach and adopt a single loop cap. In July, the Bureau adopted an order taking several measures intended to provide additional predictability and certainty for rate of return carriers as the Bureau works to adjust the benchmarking methodology as directed by the Commission. First, we concluded we would use the same formula in 2014 for benchmarks that are in place in 2013. This enabled carriers to immediately estimate what their support would be next year. Second, we deferred any further phase-in of support reductions for 2014 for carriers whose support is limited by benchmarks. Third, we waived the benchmarking rule for rate of return carriers in Alaska through 2014. One of the steps to developing a single loop cap is to update the geographical variables for all the carriers using the most up-to-date boundaries for each carrier's service area. In May and June, incumbent carriers and state commissions submitted information regarding the geographic boundary of their service territories, and since then we've been working to process the data and identify the discrepancies in the boundaries. The Bureau plans to publish an online study area boundary map to facilitate the completion of the boundary reconciliation process. We also have had a number of productive meetings with stakeholders to discuss various proposals to promote rural broadband in rate of return areas. The Bureau continues to work on other aspects of Connect America implementation as well. In the USF ICC transformation order, the Commission directed us to conduct a survey of rates in urban areas so we can develop benchmarks to ensure that rates in rural areas are reasonably comparable to urban rates. Last week, we received the necessary Office of Management and Budget approval to conduct the survey, which we will do in the near future. Since we last updated the Commission, we also received OMB approval for new reporting requirements for eligible telecommunications carriers across the country, a key component of the Commission's strengthened framework for oversight and accountability. The reports were filed with the Commission, USAC, state commissions, and tribal governments in October. State certifications that support given to eligible telecommunications within the state has been used and will be used for the intended purpose are due next month. Those certifications are based in part on a state review of the carrier's reports, and we will also be reviewing these reports ourselves as we evaluate the impact of our landmark reforms. I now turn the presentation over to Patty Robbins for a brief update on auction activities, followed by Irene Flannery, who will highlight tribal engagement activities.
Thank you. In the USF ICC transformation order, the Commission provided $300 million in one-time funding for the expansion of advanced wireless networks in areas where such networks are lacking. Mobility Fund Phase 1 support was made available through a nationwide reverse auction held in September 2012. The vast majority of the winning bidders have received an initial disbursement and will receive the remainder of their support as they complete their build-out, either to provide 4G service within 3 years or 3G service within 2 years. The Commission also set aside up to $50 million to be awarded in Tribal Mobility Fund Phase 1 for one-time support to expand advanced mobile networks in areas solely on eligible tribal lands. The bureaus released a public notice in August announcing the procedures for the Tribal Mobility Fund Phase 1 auction and updated the list of eligible areas in September. We had to adjust the original schedule for this auction due to the government-wide shutdown in October. The filing window for applications to participate in the auction will open at noon on Monday, November 18th. Applications must be submitted by 6:00 p.m. on Thursday, December 5th. The single-round Tribal Mobility Fund reverse auction will be held on February 25th, 2014. And we will now turn to Irene.
Thank you, Patty. Good morning. In the USF ICC Transformation Order, the Commission adopted the Tribal Government Engagement Obligation in recognition of the critical importance of engagement and consultation with tribal nations to the successful deployment of communication services on tribal lands. Over time, the Commission has learned that tribal nations themselves hold pieces to the puzzle of the digital divide in Indian country. ETCs are now required to meaningfully engage on an annual basis with the tribal governments on whose lands they serve and for which they receive universal service support. At a minimum, this meaningful engagement must include 1. A needs assessment and deployment planning with a focus on tribal community anchor institutions. 2. Feasibility and sustainability planning. 3. Marketing services in a culturally sensitive manner. 4. Rights-of-way processes, land use permitting, facility siting, and environmental and cultural preservation review processes. And 5. Compliance with tribal business and licensing requirements. The Commission directed ONAP, in coordination with the bureaus, to develop best practices for tribal engagement, an effort that will build upon the experiences of both tribal governments and ETCs in this first year. ETCs reported on their tribal engagement for the first time in the annual reports due in October. In the coming year, ONAP plans to build upon ongoing tribal consultation efforts and take additional steps to facilitate field meetings for engagement and best practices discussions between tribal governments and ETCs. The Tribal Government Engagement Obligation holds great promise and represents an opportunity for tribal governments and ETCs to coordinate on many issues critical to the deployment and adoption of communication services on tribal lands. Alex?
Thank you, Irene. To sum up, the bureaus and ONAP have been steadily making progress in Connect America implementation, and we have a lot of work on our plate for the coming year. We've highlighted in this presentation a number of ongoing efforts to implement the Connect America Fund. We look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and your colleagues on these important initiatives to bring broadband to rural America. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you for your efforts and for this presentation. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you. One of my proudest moments was being a part of a bipartisan commission that, after years of good faith efforts, faltered, reformed, and modernized universal service for the broadband era. Today's presentation highlights some of the significant benefits that the reforms are already unleashing for American consumers. Soon, up to 600,000 housing units, or over 1 million people in 44 states and Puerto Rico, will have access to broadband for the first time due to the second round of funding from Phase 1 of the Connect America Fund. I have seen firsthand the enormous cost of communities offline and know that having access to broadband will truly transform lives, especially for those living in rural areas. I'm also pleased to note the progress in the implementation of the Connect America Fund Phase 2, including the release of several new versions of the cost model and the outreach to help make the process and the model more transparent. This included 3 webinars, as you mentioned, with the states, and the adoption of service obligations for price cap carriers that elect to receive support under Phase 2. Consumers are also seeing the benefits of increased mobile coverage as the Wireless Bureau continued to release mobility funding for Mobility Fund Phase 1 and adopted the procedures for the Tribal Mobility Fund Phase 1 auction. These steps will clear a path for 3G or better mobile service and broadband services over those tribal lands that now lack such advanced services. I would like to thank the Office of Native Affairs and Policy for their close coordination with the bureaus and for their ongoing efforts to ensure the Commission hears the views of tribal nations and Native communities. We must continue to pursue reforms to encourage investment in rural America in order to achieve our goal of universal broadband while promoting efficient use of our finite universal service funds. Over the summer, the Bureau took a pause on the implementation of the regressions for rate of return carriers, and I am hopeful that the additional time will be sufficient for crafting the rules going forward. I've always said that we should remain open to pursuing course corrections where necessary to ensure that our rules are working as intended. Our reform should be flexible enough to adapt to the marketplace and technological changes so that America remains a leader in innovation in the digital age. The accomplishments highlighted today were only made possible because of the tremendous work of those in the wireline competition and wireless telecommunication bureaus and the Office of Native Affairs and Policy, with support from the Office of Strategy, Policy, and Policy Analysis, OSP, and the Office of General Counsel, and of course the Office of the Managing Director. I want to thank all of you for your hard work, especially over these past 6 months. The American people also owe you a great deal of thanks, as these efforts will have a tremendously powerful impact on their daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner.
2 years ago, the Commission took historic steps to modernize its high-cost universal service fund and intercarrier compensation system. In doing so, the agency refocused the high-cost universal service system from last century's technology onto the broadband and wireless challenges of this century. This is a good thing. But as I've said before, I do worry that our reforms to the high-cost universal service system are extremely complex. I fear that this complexity can deny carriers dependent on this system the certainty they need to confidently invest in their network infrastructure. So when opportunities arise to simplify our rules in a manner that is fiscally sound, good for rural consumers, and bound to inspire investment, we need to seize them. I look forward to working with my colleagues, new and old, to do just that. So thank you to the Wireline Competition Bureau, the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, and the Office of Native Affairs and Policy for your comprehensive presentation and your hard work to date and going forward.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier this summer, I had the privilege of visiting Alaska, and among the places I visited within that great state was Fort Yukon, Alaska, population several dozen on a good day. Among the things I did, I attended a meeting of Alaska Native leaders. I visited a hospital, I went to a local school, and I just chatted with consumers in the grocery store about their telecommunications needs. I'm sure they weren't expecting that, but nonetheless, it did prove valuable for me. And what I can tell you based on that simple visit in August is that for Alaskans and Alaska Natives alike, getting a broadband connection is not just a question of the physical connection. In many cases, for a lot of these people, it is a figurative connection to the outside world, all of which is to say that the FCC's efforts are so important in this field. And so I want to thank the Wireline Competition Bureau, the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, the Office of Native Affairs and Policy, and so many others at the agency for doing what you're doing and for the presentation today. The hard work you have done implementing the Historic Universal Service Transformation Order is recognized not just by those of us in this building, but from people far removed from Washington. The work you have done has been plentiful. By my account, the 759-page transformation order delegated decision-making authority over universal service issues to the bureaus 22 separate times. You met that challenge of necessity by being prolific over the last 2 years, which is no small feat given the complexity of these issues. But it's not just quantity. I've also been impressed by the quality of your efforts implementing Phase 2 of the Connect America Fund. The high caliber of your work, as I said, is appreciated, and I'm glad the Commission is recognizing it today. Turning to reforms impacting rate of return carriers, I remain concerned about the impact that the quantile regression analysis, or QRA benchmarks, are having on broadband deployment. I'm pleased both that the Bureau has suspended the benchmarks for Alaskan carriers and that the Commission has made some improvements over the course of the past year. But I continue to believe that the QRA benchmarks are chilling the build-out of next-generation networks in rural America. I hope that under Chairman Wheeler's leadership, the Commission will take a fresh look at this problem and adopt additional reforms to provide rural carriers with predictable universal service support in a fiscally responsible manner. That is not just a statutory command, but I think that is also the expectation of citizens in this great country. Thank you once again to the staff, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner.
I thank the staff for their presentation. I don't have any comments on this proceeding or this presentation. I just have a question at the appropriate time I'd like to ask. Mr. Chairman, when you think it'd be appropriate, I'm happy to.
Fire away.
Okay. I think the staff is aware that I'm going to ask this question, so hopefully they're not too surprised. During my confirmation process, I heard from a number of people asking about the Remote Areas Fund. In the USF ICC transformation order, the Commission stated that it expected to finalize the RAF in 2012 with the implementation in 2013. We're getting close to the end of 2013. I was hoping that the staff could explain what the new timeline might be and share the status of the RAF for me.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Reilly. As you say, ensuring access to residential and business consumers in the hardest to serve areas of our country is a priority, and it's something that the bureaus continue to work very hard on. We believe that the solutions for those locations need to be decided in conjunction with the rest of the Phase 2 decisions, which we are working very hard to present for the Commission's consideration and do at the Bureau level as appropriate in 2014.
Thank you.
There can be no question about the importance of expanding Internet services in the Internet age. And I must say that as I sat up here and listened to my colleagues, Commissioner Rosenworcel's specialty focusing on rural America and the challenges of delivery in rural America. Commissioner Pai's, the depth of his activity, including his grocery store research, and Commissioner Clyburn, who, when she was leading the agency, kept this all moving on, and Commissioner O'Reilly's early engagement in the issue, I think reflects the importance of this issue. We're all grateful to those of you who are on the teams that have been working on this. I am particularly mindful not only of the vast knowledge and activity that's sitting up here on the bench, but also the fact that there are 3 different bureaus represented here that have been working together, as in outside of their silos, to make sure this moves forward. And as a matter of fact, there's no bureau, there's no office here at the Commission that is not affected by this important responsibility that we have. This is a long road, and I look forward to working with my colleagues and the staff to keep moving down that road with dispatch. Thank you all. Madam Secretary, would you please announce the next item?
Last on your agenda today is a presentation by the Office of Engineering and Technology and the Office of Strategic Planning and Policy Analysis on a new FCC speed test app for Android smartphones.
Henning, are you leading the charge?
I'm starting out. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Henning Schulz-Rennie, Chief Technology Officer for the Commission. I'm delighted to be joined at the table by the people that did really the work, Walter Johnson, Chief of the Electromagnetic Compatibility Division, and James Miller, Senior Attorney Advisor, both from the Office of Engineering and Technology, as well as Eric Spy, a colleague in the Office of Strategic Planning. He's the Deputy Geographic Information Officer. They will now present the release of the FCC Speed Test app.
Okay.
James?
This morning, we're pleased to present to consumers and the Commission with an introduction to the first public version of the FCC Speed Test app, the newest tool in the Measuring Broadband America program. Measuring Broadband America's goal is to improve the availability of information on broadband performance. Over the past few years, we have developed a program built on three core principles. First, we strive for open and transparent methodologies and processes. Second, we make our data available consistent with our privacy policy so that the process is fully open. We find that this is critical to ensuring our third principle, which is collaboration with industry, because questions about our data or results can be reproduced and checked. For the mobile program, we have worked with CTIA, the Wireless Association, as well as with AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon throughout the development of this application. Since 2011, the Commission has gathered data and released 3 reports on fixed broadband performance. The goal of these fixed tests was to ensure accountability, increase transparency, and enhance competition. The reports have shown yearly improvements in broadband performance, spurred competition among providers, and provided consumers with access to accurate and meaningful information. We now extend the Measuring Broadband America program to mobile broadband networks through the FCC Speed Test app for Android. We developed the app employing the same core principles of openness, transparency, and collaboration. We hope that providing transparent information to consumers about mobile network performance will encourage network improvements and drive competition and fact-based decision-making. Consumer privacy was our top priority in program development. We worked with representatives of the Federal Trade Commission, academic privacy experts, and industry to develop our privacy policy. We stressed that the data collection is anonymous and that no personal or uniquely identifiable information is collected. We are also taking additional steps where necessary to protect consumer privacy. Prior to release of the data, for example, a technical privacy expert will analyze its statistical properties to ensure anonymity and prevent any re-identification. James?
Thank you, Walt. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we will now demonstrate the app we are rolling out this week. The FCC Speed Test app is available to download for free from Google Play. Consumers will be able to run tests of their network performance anytime they wish. In addition, in order to get statistically accurate information about typical mobile broadband network performance, tests will also periodically run in the background only when the consumer is not using his or her phone. The tests will measure speed, packet loss, latency, along with some passive metrics like cell tower ID, and upload those results to a secure server. Like all mobile apps, the app uses some data to perform measurements. The app has a default limit of 100 megabytes per month, as shown in the screenshot, which may be increased or decreased from within the app by the consumer. We will now show a short video demonstrating how a consumer may perform manual tests on demand. First, the consumer presses the Run Now button and then selects one test or all. And as each active measurement is completed, it displays on the screen for the consumer. We can see the results being displayed at the side of each of the active tests. The consumer can also scroll down to see the passive metrics, such as the cell tower ID, the signal strength, and whether the phone is in roaming during the test. In addition, consumers will be able to
to see performance history from within the application, such as graphs of download speed over the course of a month or a year. Consumers will benefit from an app that is open, free, easy to use, and provides meaningful information about their own smartphone. It also gives consumers answers to common questions like how fast a certain technology is at home, work, or on a commute. The aggregated results will also spur competition among mobile broadband providers that we expect will encourage network improvements over time. And now we'll hear more about that from Eric Spry.
In OSP, we have worked to develop a roadmap to make the aggregated anonymous data available as consumer-focused maps and visualizations, allowing consumers as well as the Commission to make informed, fact-based decisions. In January, we will release an interactive map to present an initial view of the data. Over time, we will develop additional tools that allow comparisons at a local level by technology and as recommended by consumers, interest groups, and stakeholders. This slide presents two potential visualizations based on early test data. At the beginning of the year, we will be able to visualize the data at the national level, as seen in the lower right map. Also in the first quarter of 2014, as sufficient data points are collected, we will present data at increased levels of resolution, such as metropolitan Seattle, shown at top left. Within 6 months, we plan to release more detailed information to inform consumers about local mobile broadband performance specific to where they live, work, and travel. In line with our principle of openness and transparency, we have made our software open source. The underlying data will be free and open to the public. This allows third parties to verify its integrity and examine how the collection process works. The value of this app will only grow as consumers download the app and public interest groups and academics provide their insights into this new consumer resource. This is truly an open and public process. We want to hear from consumers about the app and how we can make it better in future releases. Our email will be available on the website. We hope the public will now join us in downloading and using the FCC Speed Test app for Android, available now in the Google Play Store. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much to all four of you. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you. I applaud our staff's efforts to develop an application that will test and map the speed, latency, and other performance metrics of mobile broadband service on Android phones. I look forward to seeing a similar app for iPhones. The percentage of our population who rely on mobile service for their personal communications needs continues to grow, and for those living below the poverty line, that figure is now estimated at 52%. This underscores why we must do all we can to ensure that these customers have accurate, relevant information needed to make informed choices. Knowledge about how various mobile broadband providers compare at specific locations in a geographic market will aid them in choosing the provider that best suits their needs. Transparent information about service performance does not just enable consumers to select among service offerings in a meaningful way, it also creates incentives for providers to improve those services. The Commission's annual report on residential ISP service those reports were successful in doing just that. The first, Measuring Broadband America report in 2011, found that during periods of peak demand, the average ISP delivered the download speed it advertised only 87% of the time. By February of 2013, the updated report found that this number had risen to 97%. The detailed data this new mobile broadband app will collect can help consumers verify whether they're receiving the mobile broadband speeds that the companies advertise, and I hope it will also encourage providers to upgrade their mobile networks if warranted and improve the quality of the services they offer. I wish to commend the parties who helped the Commission develop, the staff develop the Mobile Broadband America app for mobile broadband, which was made possible through a partnership with various wireless carriers, academics, and other government agencies. Continued collaboration will also be important as we develop a comprehensive report on mobile broadband performance. Thank you.
Commissioner Rosenworcel.
The wireless revolution shows no signs of slowing. Today, over 40% of all data traffic flows over mobile devices. Within 2 years, the data used by mobile devices will surpass that used by wired devices. If you take away only one thing from statistics like these, it is that access to mobile broadband is becoming an essential part of everything we do. But as the uses of wireless broadband multiply in our lives, so do the questions. Will my wireless connection work for high-definition streaming video? Is it sufficient for teleconferencing? Will it support cutting-edge teaching tools? Is it reliable enough for critical telemedicine functions? The mobile application that the Commission is rolling out today will help provide answers. We build on our past work measuring wired broadband performance by creating the FCC Speed Test app. Consumers can download this application and run tests that will measure wireless speed, latency, and packet loss. This will help shine a light on actual speeds and help consumers answer questions about the capabilities of their wireless service. Going forward, I hope the Commission can build on this approach and come up with other ways to provide consumers with the information they need to make good decisions in a communications marketplace that can sometimes be bewildering to navigate. Our consumer complaint and inquiry process strikes me as one example. We receive roughly 400,000 consumer complaints and inquiries each year. This is a treasure trove of information. But the data we collect is published only in snapshot form. I hope we can consider making our data more open, using machine-readable formats and common metadata tagging schemes. Then we can use this information and data to inform the Commission's policy activities. And we can turn to others to slice and dice these numbers and identify meaningful trends that deserve our attention, our concern, or even our praise. In short, there are a lot of other places in our work to harness the power of technology, the power of transparency, and the collective wisdom of the public. But today's new FCC Speed Test app is a good development and an exciting start. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Walter Johnston, to James Miller, and to Eric Spry for that presentation. As we've seen, the FCC Speed Test app is a promising tool, and I hope that it will allow app users, the Commission, and the public at large to better understand wireless broadband network performance. I think that this app demonstrates what we can achieve when some of the best minds inside and outside the agency come together. I'm pleased, in particular, that the Commission worked with a team of privacy experts to ensure that the app does not collect personally identifiable information and to anonymize the identity of users before public disclosure. It's also important to note, as Mr. Spry did, that the Commission is being transparent. For people who are interested in how this app works, there is no wizard hiding behind the curtain. It's all open source. You can get on GitHub, download the code, and suggest improvements or develop versions for your own needs. Like our presenters, I too am excited to see how innovators, academics, and others will use this app to answer questions that we haven't even thought to ask. I also look forward to seeing the results from the next step in the Commission's Measuring Broadband America program. In particular, I believe that data that is generated by the app will confirm the success of our nation's wireless policies. Those policies, inspired by a long-standing, bipartisan deregulatory consensus, have led to more robust deployment and faster speeds for consumers. According to Cisco, for example, American consumers currently enjoy the second fastest mobile broadband speeds in the entire world. America's carriers outpace those in Japan, South Korea, the United Kingdom, Germany, and France, among others, despite the fact that we have a vaster geographic space to cover. But to maintain this strong position, we must auction more spectrum for mobile broadband. We must enable broader unlicensed use of the 5 gigahertz band, and we must avoid intrusive regulation that will deter innovation and wireless infrastructure investment. On a self-interested note, I look forward to the release of the iOS version of this app so that I can see how my own experience compares to those of other consumers here in Washington, to consumers in Mr. Miller's home state of Kansas, to those in Nashville, Tennessee, home of former Commissioner Deborah Taylor Tate, who is joining us this morning, and to others across this nation. In the interim, I encourage everyone with an Android phone or tablet to download the app, test it out, and submit your data. Let's see what happens. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Reilly.
Thank you for the presentation, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. And thank you for spending time earlier this week briefing me on your good work. Based on the conversation that we were able to have in my office, we talked about how, in general, based on the data on the fixed side, it appears that ISPs are over-delivering rather than over-promising, which let's just see if that continues on the mobile side. So interested in that. One data point that we talked about that I'm interested in more information as we go forward, certainly not today, but it's on the cost aspect. It's about $500,000 for the fixed and mobile programs together, and I just would like some more information as that going forward. I wonder if there isn't a way to switch this to a Prize X type scenario where we challenge some outside folks to contest this for free in some instances, because I know there's a number of really smart young folks out there that can build all kinds of creative applications. But I thank you for your work, and this is an opportunity for consumers to learn more about what's happening with their devices. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I, too, join with my colleagues in saying huzzah. I just left almost a decade as a venture capitalist investing in applications like this. So I felt back home with your presentation. I'm also reminded that Google just spent $1 billion, that's with a B, to buy a crowdsourcing app by the name of Waze that crowdsourced traffic information. And that it seems to me that what you all have done is to bring the same kind of entrepreneurial verve and crowdsourcing technology to help consumers as well as this commission without stock options. And we're grateful to you for that. We've talked up here a lot. You've heard from my colleagues about the success of the earlier Measuring Broadband report and how consumers have benefited from that, and how competition has increased the deliverables as a result of that. And so what this means for consumers is obviously incredibly important and puts that information in their pocket. But let's not underestimate what it also means for us in this agency. If we're going to be making fact-based decisions, we need facts. And you are enlisting the American people to help deliver those facts and create a potential for an incredibly rich data set. Let me revert for one moment to my previous VC life and say I guess we would call this a public beta release that you're doing here. You've been having your beta test, your private beta tests. We now release it. We're seeking feedback. It's always going to be improving, right? It's always going to be improving. As Commissioner Pai indicated, the iPhone is coming. But what I have been really interested in as I've worked with this team is an agenda of improvements, if you will. That early in Q1, this will tie to into FCC.gov and the maps there, so that you can compare information within your area. that in Q2 of next year you will have higher resolution data with more detailed results, such as providers, networks, technology, etc. And in Q3 of next year, the continued granularity that comes out of an expansion of the number of users allows for yet more information and more graphical representation of that information. So this is an ongoing activity, a continually improving activity, as any good app should be. And I'm also particularly pleased to see how this team has focused on the issue of privacy and has kept privacy front and center, and the rights of consumers to have their privacy respected. We also want to thank CTIA, the 4 major wireless carriers who participated in this, but most of all, the 4 non-stock option entrepreneurs at the FCC, and thank you for what you have done. Before we move to the next item, thank you all. I want to see if there's anything that any of my colleagues up here would like to add. I know, Commissioner Pai, you have something you wanted to bring up at this point?
Sure, but I'll defer my senior colleagues if they have staff announcements.
Do you, Jessica? No. Okay, sorry.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this point, I would like to take this opportunity to formally thank my fall class of interns, Burke Johnson, Justin Bell, and Seth Williams. Burke, I believe you're still here, and thank you. You're representing the team this morning. So on behalf of the whole group, I know, hopefully you enjoyed yourself a little bit in between. She said just a little bit. Okay. Seriously, I want you and your fellow interns have worked just so hard during a very interesting transitional time. So I thank you so much. I'm sure when you accepted this internship, you never thought you'd be furloughed for a couple of weeks. I hope you, I don't know what you did. I didn't bother to ask. But anyway, thank you for never missing a beat with us and helping to do such important work. So again, on behalf of the team that you represent, I thank you so much, Burke.
Commissioner Rosenworcel has informed me she has nothing to add, so the gentleman from Kansas. You have things to add. It's appropriate.
To the old people?
This is
the old people you mentioned.
Are you going to make it rough when the rookie chairman is what's going on? First of all, this comment about old folks, and then okay. There's some of us who are sensitive about that, you know. The gentleman from Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take a minute to express verbally what I expressed in writing a couple of days ago, and that is the unfortunate passing of former FCC Commissioner Robert Wells. Bob Wells served at this agency between 1969 and 71, but his legacy is much richer than that. He rose from relatively humble circumstances in Garden City, Kansas, got into the business in 1936, the depths of the Depression, as a radio broadcaster, ultimately became a publisher of the Garden City Telegram, and, of course, later served at the FCC. He also served as the president of the Kansas Association of Radio Broadcasters, the president of the Garden City Rotary Club, and many other positions. I'll also note something that I didn't want to put in the statement for reasons that will become obvious, but when he and his wife Kay were living in Garden City, an unfortunate, really terrible crime was committed not far from where they lived, and a man from New York came with what was called his secretary at the time to visit, and they became friends with the Wells family and during that visit. And over the years, the Wells stayed in touch with them. Those two New Yorkers were Truman Capote and Harper Lee, and over the years, they stayed in touch, and Harper Lee in particular became a close friend of Bob and Kay Wells. And it's just one of the many anecdotes I could trot out there to prove to those who might be skeptical that you never know what luminaries you're going to meet in rural Kansas. So I want to thank former Commissioner Wells for his service to our country, both as an FCC commissioner and as a World War II veteran, and express my condolences to his wife Kay, their two sons, one of whom works here in town in this space. And want to just thank the chairman for his indulgence.
Thank you for reminding us all of that in his service, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Reilly?
Nothing
Any
to
announcements? Well, if there are no further announcements, Madam Secretary, would you please announce the next FCC meeting?
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, December 12th, 2013.
Thank you very much. Until then, we stand adjourned.
Are we ready for the chairman's press availability? Is that better? So, it's going to be the normal routine. We're just going to go along the table. Everyone will get. Are we ready for the chairman's press availability? We fine? Are we ready for the chairman's press availability? Is that better? So, it's going to be the normal routine. We're just going to go along the table. Everyone will get the opportunity for a question each. And if you could just introduce yourself and identify your media outlet, please.
Hey, Justin, let's not. I mean, you're restricting us to one question. I mean, there's a lot of people here today. I think that we could probably agree to that for today. But we deal with highly complex issues. Reporters need a follow-up. I don't see why we can't be reasonable here and give people a follow-up when they need it.
Okay. We'll think about it. Yeah, we'll have a
press conference. The chairman of the FCC.
Wait a minute, Justin, be reasonable. I mean, now let's have some realistic expectations here. Let's just start the process, folks.
My name is Monty Taylor. I'm with Com Daily.
Hey, Monty.
Hi. I just wanted to know, you talked a little bit about how spectrum's a consideration for applications in the foreign ownership cap.
Yep.
But you guys didn't talk about any of what information is going to be required. There's no specifics. You guys must have some idea of what you're going to want companies to submit. Can you give us any idea about, besides how it will affect spectrum policy, what factors you'll be considering?
I think you ought to wait till the order comes out, and there'll be some
specifics in there.
You'll see a more fuller description. But I think the other side of it is it's not just the information that you're told or suggested to submit. It's also the eye of the needle through which it passes. Okay. Which, as we have said, and I'll repeat, is it's national security, it's media diversity, it's localism, it's spectrum, it's the policies that were established by Congress for us to enforce.
Brooks Bolick, Politico.
Is this question A or question 1, Brooks? I just want to be sure where you're going here.
You never can tell. Does the commission need to approve a spectrum aggregation order before the H block and the 600 megahertz auction?
So the whole issue of spectrum ownership, the auctions, and everything are. I've spent more time on that in the last 10 days than I have on any single topic. I'm saying that as a preface to why I'm going to punt on that question, because I'm not ready to answer it yet. But I'm not sitting around here, sucking eggs. We're looking seriously at these issues.
Hi, Matthew Schwartz with Communications Daily.
Hey, Matt.
It's been a couple years since the FCC instituted its reforms of the Universal Service Fund, focusing a lot on the distribution side. Not since Commissioner Robert McDowell was up here has anyone really pushed for reform of the contribution side. So is reforming the contribution side of the Universal Service Fund important, and do you plan to make it a priority?
The entirety of the Universal Service Fund is important. And what I tried to suggest today is that it's a long road, and that long road has multiple components. It's both the gazintas and the gazetas.
How do you spell that? I wanted to. I was thinking somebody else might already ask this, but there's been some interesting developments on the H block in the last couple of days because it looks like T-Mobile and Sprint are saying they're not going to. And the commission decided to do a January auction, but there were concerns about doing that all along, whether it would be better to wait. I'm just wondering, where are we at right now on the H block, and is that something you're going to be revisiting if it looks like there's only going to be one?
We're holding an auction on the 22nd of January. If I could wear a sandwich board up here and say, auction open, y'all come, I would. I think that there's going to be some interesting dynamics that result that come as a result of these changes. Obviously, number one, there's already a reserve price that has been established, so this isn't exactly going to be a worry about walking away with nothing in your pocket auction. But secondly, is the decision of some parties not to participate may be seen as an opportunity for other parties to participate, and that's the wonder of the market. And the applications to participate close tomorrow, and the only message I've got is y'all come.
Thank you.
Bryce.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Bryce Patrick, Bloomberg BNA.
Yes, sir.
Wanted to ask you, Chairman Rockefeller introduced a bill this week to what he's called level the playing field for online video providers. Wondering what role do you think the FCC has in this marketplace?
I haven't. It's a good question, Bryce, and I haven't seen the bill, and I don't even think last I saw it hadn't been put on the web, so I have yet to see it. In general, the more we can get into a discussion about video policies and about the evolution of the video marketplace, the better.
Thank you.
Lynn Stanton from Telecommunications Reports.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi. The New York Times reported that AT&T has sold data to the CIA on call records, and Howard Feld has a blog posting suggesting that this is a violation of CPNI rules. And I was wondering, does the FCC have any interest in this? Would you be considering opening an investigation as to whether or not there were any rules broken in that process?
That's a really interesting question that I have not looked into.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Gautam Nagesh with the Wall Street Journal. You spoke in your comments on the foreign ownership cap about the need for efficient use of spectrum. You had a couple specific examples like freeing up capital for spectrum share agreements or the UHF to VHF conversion. That suggests to us that really a company that pledged to, say, participate in next year's reverse auction may stand a better chance of having that exemption to the cap approved. Does that seem accurate to you?
No, wait a minute. You're trying to infer from that there was some kind of oblique blessing given?
Not
no.
that.
The answer to that is no. What I was saying, however, is that you have to fit, that it's back to the eye of the needle comment that I was making before, that there is an eye, which is the policy that the Congress has created for us, and included in that is spectrum policy. And we are in the middle of a rather serious, dramatic process to make sure that spectrum is being put to its most efficient use. And that is a policy issue that ought to be considered when you are looking on a case-by-case basis at any proposals that come in. This is a holistic commission, right? All the parts ought to relate to all the other parts.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
Mr. Chairman. Cecilia
Hi,
Kong with
Cecilia.
the Washington Post. I'd like to piggyback on that question about over-the-top video and online video. The fact that a senator this week and two senators earlier this year have brought up concern about the way that the online video market is developing and that they'd like to see some changes with the cable model and the whole ecosystem of TV. Do you think that indicates that there's a legitimate concern in your mind in that marketplace, just aside from conversation?
In my mind?
Yes, in your mind.
I don't think senators introduce legislation because what they think is on my mind. But
I'm asking you what is on your mind.
No, I think one of the things that I said in my confirmation hearing was the fact that the dynamism and what's happening and the evolution in the video marketplace is something that we seriously have to not only keep abreast of, but figure out what the policy ramifications are. And I certainly, and we certainly, have not made any conclusions as to what the policy ramifications are. But you would have to be living on another planet not to know that there are huge dynamic changes taking place in that. And in a dynamic marketplace, it is worthwhile to have the kind of debate and discussion and review that this kind of legislation promotes.
Elena, you had a...
Elena, sorry, didn't mean to jump over you.
Hi, Lena with Reuters. You're going to love this question. Now that you have read some of the background and now that you're in the seat of the chair, are you open to considering more mergers in the wireless sector? Not to address your AT&T T-Mobile comment earlier. You've addressed it since then, but in the hearing you said you didn't know enough about it. You weren't in the commission at the time. What's your position on that now?
It is no secret to anybody that for the last 10 days I have been talking about competition, and how the responsibility of this agency is to protect competition where it exists and promote competition in those areas where it doesn't. And when there are, if there are proposals put forth, we'll certainly look at them on a case-by-case, fact-based basis.
I'm JJ Smith from Streaming Media Magazine. She stole my question, but I'm going to follow up with the FCC has some policies in place now that indirectly support streaming of video over-the-top television and PEG channels. Under the agenda of improving, have you looked at any of those policies and saw places, or do you plan to implement any of your own?
Do I plan to deploy any over the top, or do I plan to deploy any new policies?
Policies.
That's. We did an app today, so we could do over the top too, right? That's an issue that I'm not ready to talk about, on my 10th day. It's a legitimate question, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Todd Shields, Bloomberg News.
Hi, Todd.
Does the FCC have the power today to intervene in retransmission consent disputes?
Wow. Was there a follow-up question?
No, I'll let you handle that one.
Todd, I have heard folks expressing both sides of that, and I think that what we have to do, what I have to do, and what the whole agency has to do is to do a further analysis, to do my own analysis of that question, which I have not yet done. Golly, it sounds, I'm standing up here telling I haven't decided, I haven't done this, it seems like what I've been doing for 10 days. Sorry.
Hi, Katie Bachman at Adweek.
Hi, Katie.
So I'm going to ask you about something that's been kicking around a long time. There have been a few things like media ownership rules that are kicking around. Are you going to get to those soon, or are you?
Well, we're kind of in a situation where we're at the end of the quadrennial review, right? And so,
just a few years
so
later.
We're going to have to. Like I said, we're going to have to. I'm not ready to make any announcement today, but the fair expectation when you come to the end of the quad.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Well, this went down.
So we'll have the Bureau portion of the press conference, and my understanding is there are questions on foreign ownership, so we'll start with that one. And also for measuring mobile broadband next. Thanks.
Hi, Bill Lake. Do we have questions?
Monty? Yeah, Monty Bailey. You talked about the fact that there had been very few applications for foreign investment over the cap because of a misperception about whether the commission would consider them. And then subsequent to that, the commissioners all talked about how it had been a policy. So I was wondering if you guys could clarify how that perception came about. Was it a policy? Would you have considered them? Can you talk about that at all?
We've had very few requests, and of those we had, a number were turned down. I think that was interpreted by some in the industry, and they told us that in the coalition that came to us in their request, that had been interpreted as meaning don't even ask because we won't consider. When we look at the statute, it says that we have the authority to consider and approve where it's in the public interest, and what we wanted to do was simply clarify that if there was such a misperception that you shouldn't even ask, it was a misperception, and we are willing to consider them on a case-by-case basis in light of all the policies that the chairman mentioned.
Bill, the concern among people is that basically the bigs are going to be able to use this to their ends. How do you ensure that the smaller entities, minority and women-owned entities are the ones that get access to this? Access is the wrong word, but you know what I'm talking about. How do you? Is there any way to ensure that? I mean, I'm thinking back to the News Corporation where on M Street, where they basically said Rupert Murdoch couldn't own all this stuff and forced him to reorganize his company. I know there's not a very good question in there, but how you get what I mean, I hope. Sorry.
Well, we don't consider it our job to generate the transactions. We sit here to review the requests that we may receive. Among those who were urging us to make this clarification were a number of organizations who thought that this would open opportunities for minority and small broadcasters to obtain capital that they haven't obtained in the past. So that's their prediction, and that may be followed up by transactions that are brought to us. But we see us as having the role of simply considering the transactions that may reach us.
Gotham, why don't you go ahead?
Staying with that same issue, when it comes to minorities, obviously foreign ownership opens up the question, would a foreign owner be considered diverse ownership if they were, as opposed to, say, an African American or Hispanic American ownership? Would, say, Latin American ownership be considered diversity by the FCC?
It's certainly within the broad concept of diversity. As you know, as we've pursued diversity as a policy in our ownership proceedings, it includes the question of promoting minority ownership among minority groups in this country, but also viewpoint diversity, other kinds of diversity, and certainly considering diversity in that broad sense, foreign ownership would contribute to additional diversity in the market.
Last question?
Monty Daly. A couple of groups raised concerns that increased foreign ownership would squeeze out domestic minority voices. They were saying that an international company from Mexico or something would broadcast Mexican programming instead of domestic American programming intended for American-born Latinos. Is that a criteria that would be considered by the FCC in approving an application?
We heard different things on that. I think there were more groups who said that this would create additional opportunities for minorities. We did hear from some groups that they worried that it might harm minority ownership. I think that we're simply in a situation at this point to say we'll consider every transaction on its facts, and we'll consider all possible policy implications of a transaction that comes to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, measuring mobile broadband team, you can come up. Lynn?
Could you explain how you happened to choose, I think it was 500 megabytes per month that was this default
500.
limit? 500, yes. Could you discuss how you chose that and sort of how that compares to what you're seeing as typical monthly limits that people are actually choosing in their plans?
Well, we worked with AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint on this. There's no number that is the right number, okay? So, but we tried to pick a number that was very small in comparison to many of the more popular plans. So, for example, 100 megabytes is 5% of a 2 gigabyte plan, which is a very common lower end plan for many of the carriers. Now, there are plans below that, which is why, one, we identify that it does use data, all speed tests use data to the consumer, and second, as part of the setup process, the consumer has a chance to adjust that to the specifics of their own plan. They can also set a timer so that they can align the monthly cycle with their actual billing cycle for the same purposes. So we came out with a number which statistically we believe is on the low end of the population, but being on the low end means you're still on the high end of some percentage of the population. So we've allowed the consumer to set it to their specific needs.
It's really a trade-off between wanting to gather accurate data across an unknown population of devices and trading it off against making it possible for as many people as possible to participate without fearing that they will either run out of data budget or, worse yet, get charged extra for that. And that's going to be part of the exploratory process as we get feedback from users as to whether that was the right number or whether we need to adjust that either up or down as the need may be.
Kyle Daly with SNL Kagan. I'm just kind of wondering, I mean, it seems like the value proposition for non-geeky users might not be all that strong, or at least, all that readily apparent at launch. And then on the other hand, obviously you guys are really working to make this very transparent, a lot of assurances about privacy, but it still seems like a lot of people might be hesitant to use an app that, is handing over any data to a government agency. So in light of that, I mean, are you all concerned about either user engagement or sort of the integrity of data, given how selective or sort of self-selective reporting might be?
I can say something.
All right. I mean, we started, first of all, the value proposition. This is an ad-free program that we have worked with Federal Trade Commission, academic experts, a whole host of people in terms of what information we collect in a very open process that I know some of you as reporters have actually participated in from time to time. So we're offering a product which is sort of a clean product that gives the individual useful information. The other thing I'll point out is that from the initial Fixed Measuring Broadband America program, we found out that there is a fair number of people interested in helping build data that's openly available and made accessible to the public. We had in a very minimal outreach program, within a few weeks, we had 100,000 volunteers subscribing to that program. Okay, and in terms of the other side of the equation, the principles of privacy were the first thing that we undertook in this endeavor. We follow best practices. We've made the software open for inspection, so you can use it, you can inspect it. We've done everything that is possible to following best privacy practices, and focused in a way that most companies don't. We're interested in minimizing the amount of information we collect. I think, as you are aware, many applications view a free service as an opportunity to collect information for ad purposes or for resale purposes. This was not the intent of this program. So the value proposition is a useful service to the customer, which we've tried to make interesting as well as free of ads and a commitment to privacy concerns. And a customer contribution to something I think what people think is important, which is a database of the broadband nation that we see today for the United States. And Henning, any comments?
Yeah, so we also know from other countries which have started on a much smaller scale programs that there are a large number of people who are curious about their own performance, how it compares to what other people are experiencing in that. And so we see that there is a fairly large number, and it doesn't have to be a large percentage of the U.S. population. We don't need 10 million participants. We probably couldn't deal with 10 million participants. We get them that are interested in doing that. But that's exactly also going to be one of those experiments. We don't know. I hope that your collective contributions will make people want to contribute to figuring out how well their own connection is working in different places, as well as to contribute to a reliable, non-marketing driven database of real-world performance. And there are lots of people who'd like to help with that, and we look forward to working with those. And I should add one more thing, is we're also looking for specific groups that have a, if you like, official interest in that, state workers of various sort that might actually use that as part of their efforts, visiting places that may be not as popular with civilians, if you like, as well. And they would see that as part of their mission of improving public services to their state or their county, for example.
Let's just go down the table, Matt.
I'm Matt George with Communications Daily. At least a couple of the commissioners have Apple iPhones. I just got a new iPad. I know that about a year ago you guys were discussing the possibility of maybe doing an Apple-compatible product. You were talking about possibly reaching out to Apple. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on your attempts to meet with them, the results of any meetings you had, and what your plans for Apple products are in the future.
Well, we didn't meet with either. We approached this as a normal development shop, so we did not have specific meetings either with Google or with Apple. We do have an Apple product. I think the chairman alluded to that. But some of you are aware, one of the differences between the current Apple product and the current Android product is one can be scheduled for background applications, the Android product. The Apple product can't. So in terms of what we're trying to do, the ability to have a statistically valid test, the Android product had a slightly higher priority, and it's the first product we're delivering. We are in testing on the Apple product. The coding's completed. We don't have a set date for release yet, but it will be shortly. And knowing the chairman, shorter than perhaps we would like. but it is that we do have a commitment to deliver the Apple product, and it will be delivered within the next month or so.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Pardon me?
Can I ask a follow-up on that? Are you going to be able to get valuable data from the program on Apple, given that it is entirely user-driven? You can't run tests in the background. How statistically valid will those results be?
We mark. Okay, that's a good question. Okay, we mark the data in terms of how the test was generated. So if the test was automatically scheduled, it'll be marked as a scheduled test. And if it was a manual test, it'll be marked as a manual test. That data in itself is interesting because it'll give us some understanding of potential skewing between manual tests and scheduled tests. Something that's been talked about in the academic circles. People have been concerned about this. This might be the first time we get empirical data in terms of what sort of skewing occurs in that environment.
And we also certainly look forward to working with Apple or Google in improving the product going forward. So this is meant to be collaborative and the first step.
You can say that one more time, by the way.
Hi, I'm Sean Miley from the Kiplinger Letter. I was wondering if you had sort of any expectations about how many people would need to download it for it to be useful, and will we sort of be updated on how many downloads there are?
Well, some of that information is available on the Google Play store itself. I'll give you the answer. We know the numbers is counted in hundreds of thousands. Until we start seeing statistics, we don't know how much data we need, and also it's sort of a balloon sort of a equation in the sense that if you have less people, it takes you longer to get data that you need. If you have more people, you get more useful data much more quickly. So part of the answer is how much speed do you need? How much time to closure do you need in terms of getting useful data? And these are things we're actually going to be informed on. I think Tom talked about this as an evolutionary program. This is a first step for us. We're working with leaders in industry, leaders in academia. Everybody's interested in this program because it provides, for the first time, unrestricted open data on something that people believe is very important in the country. And as we get the results, our process is to inform people of that, and we have a good track record in that. And we'll know probably by first quarter next year of where we stand in terms of the velocity rate of data acquisition and what target rates are. And as Henning alluded to, we're starting, the importance of today is that we can talk publicly about what we're doing right now. And we have a number of thoughts in terms of increasing outreach programs in the coming months that would focus on state authorities, other possible areas that would build a base.
And there will always be differences in coverage between different parts of the country, and we'll always have fewer people in North Dakota than we'll have in California probably. And so, but our data collection and statistics mechanism is tuned to make that possible, to provide the most accurate but privacy-respecting data given what we have. So one of the nice things about the program is it can succeed at different levels. It can succeed when we have relatively few. We'll get the kind of initial maps that Eric showed already as just based on trials, fairly coarse-grained. And as the program rolls out, we'll get much more detailed information. So we don't need a certain number to succeed, more the better. But this can be an ongoing, improving outreach as we get confidence in our processes, improve the availability across different platforms, and also get a better sense of where, particularly geographically or by type of network or by type of platform, we need additional participants, and can then use our collaboration with other parties to specifically reach out to those geographies, platforms, networks, whatever the need may be.
We're going to need one more, and then we're going to need to wrap it up.
With the fixed broadband measuring program, you had a limit that was because of the boxes, the devices that you had to ship out. And you had mentioned, Henning, something about you probably couldn't deal with 10 million. Is there a practical limit to how many users, either from, I assume you're pinging the server somewhere, to the test is, and also just dealing with the sheer amount of data that you get?
We can scale up. It's the cloud. So it's really that we can probably do multiple millions easily, and there's really no inherent limit to the system, that there is some fixed cap built into the system. It does require additional resources, but we'll gladly have that problem.
We also schedule.
We can control the schedule so that we can reduce the amount of data. As we have more participants, going back to your earlier question, is as we have more participants, we probably don't need as much data from each individual participant. So we can tune that as involved without doing new releases. That's something that's controllable as we get a better sense of participation by geography and other factors I mentioned.
Thank you.
When do you anticipate the first mobile broadband report to be released? Do you have a target date for that?
By report, you mean a paper analysis?
Do you plan something akin to the Measuring Broadband America report with mobile?
Yeah, I think we can say yes, but it's not the first priority. The first priority, this type of data basically lends itself to mapping, and unlike the fixed report. So our first priority is to work on both improving the product, the outreach, and the maps. We have some fuzzy notion right now in terms of we probably will do a report because we've done reports in the past. It won't be the first work product we deliver. It won't be till at least second half of the year. And it's one of those things, again, and this, by the way, we hit this problem with the fixed report. Until you see the data, until you start understanding what the data looks like, you really don't understand what you want to report on. So I can tell you we went through 3 versions of the fixed report before we got to the point where we had a report. So I think this is going to be a very iterative process of looking at the data, talking to the service providers, and the rest of the collaborative that we've established in terms of informing us in terms of what are the useful data and how do we bring that out best. It's not an easy process.
Yeah, unlike in the fixed case where you had a relatively clear metric, % of advertised as kind of a headline number with lots of interesting additional things, we don't anticipate that there will be a single number. We don't want to have the average broadband speed in the U.S. That's meaningless because it's not something that affects you individually. So that's where the goals are slightly different, and so there's not likely going to be like a headline number type thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that is it for today. Is that right? Okay, thank you.